welcome back, everybody, to On Texas Football, the On Texas Football YouTube channel, and our Wednesday night live stream. I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for tuning in. Joining me, as always, on Wednesdays, we've got lifetime Longhorn 2005 national champion Marcus Myers. Marcus, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, sir. How about yourself?
I love that good, solid hook 'em at the start of the show. Marcus gets us off to a good start. And as Rod Babers calls him, the young prodigy, a lifetime Longhorn himself, CJ Vogel. CJ, we're talking a little bit of recruiting tonight. We're going to get to it at some point here soon.
Yeah, definitely. We got some new official visits that we'll talk about. Texas closing back in on 50 official visits. I'm sure we'll end up closer to that 55, 56 range like we did a year ago. But right now, up to 49. We'll talk about 3 of them that set officials over the last 24 hours.
Good stuff. All right, we'll get to it. We'll also give a shout out to our sponsors throughout tonight's show. That's Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise, our lead sponsor. I'll let you know more about our fine sponsors here again throughout the show. Whatever you got in the chat, questions, comments, concerns, airing of grievances, doesn't matter. Line it up. We'll get to it throughout the show. Super chats, as always, jump to the front of the line. Guys, I wanted to start. There's a couple of different places where we could start at. And Marcus, actually, I'll let you start with this. You had something you wanted to get to Longhorn equipment related at the start of the show.
Yeah, man, it sounds kind of silly on one hand, but if you really think about it, like, you know, our equipment managers, the trainers, they're really kind of the lifeblood of any program. And y'all have heard me talk, you know, time and time again. Part of why I always am wearing something Longhorn related is typically I'm wearing some old stuff from when you know, I was playing, and our manager was a guy named Chip Robertson. Actually ran into him when I was leaving the baseball game last weekend, but he was inducted to the SEC Equipment Hall of Fame. And so I just thought it was pretty cool that, you know, those are some of the guys that were, you know, taking care of us back in the day, making sure that our you know, shoes and everything that we needed were right. And somebody that, you know, always loved on us and had a great personality. And it's cool to still kind of see him around campus from time to time, but was really happy to see that, you know, he had been inducted into the SEC Equipment Hall of Fame. Didn't know it existed, but if anybody belongs in it, it's definitely Chip.
Good stuff, Marcus. Yeah, you meet anybody that was in the Texas program when Chip Robertson was the equipment manager, which covers a lot of ground. Nothing but good things to say about him. So we'll say the great Chip Robertson. Congratulations on that honor. CJ, there's a Hall of Fame discussion I want to have later that you got started over on the message board over on TexasFootball.com. But I want to start out tonight's show, gentlemen, talking about penalties. And look, this is one of those hot button topics related to the team because it is one of those things, one of the legit things that could derail this team or keep it from reaching its ceiling, which I think we all agree the ceiling for this team is, hey, you can go win the whole thing in 2026. So, CJ, I went and looked at it, broke it down, and there's still some more. I could have gone deeper, but I figured, hey, I'd already gone deep enough in this deal. Like, let's just get it out there. So I looked at every national champion in the CFP era and where they were in terms of penalties. And only 2 of the 12 national champions in the CFP era have finished outside the top 60 nationally in both penalties per game and penalty yards per game in the year in which they won the national championship. That was Clemson in 2016, which quarterbacked by Deshaun Watson. I think there were 5 first-round picks on that roster. Dexter Lawrence, Christian Wilkins. It was a really talented team. The other was that 2019 LSU team with Joe Burrow, which it's in the discussion for the most prolific offense we've ever seen in college football. So, CJ, if you're going to be talented enough to kind of outrun your mistakes, you better be generationally talented. Now, this Texas team, CJ, might be that talented, but based on the numbers that I looked at, especially recently, you got to be infinitely more buttoned up than you were last year.
Yeah, look, that 60 number tells me Texas needs to be just slightly above average, right? I believe there are 138 FBS teams this year. It increased by 2 from a year ago. Texas, I believe you have the numbers, Jeff. What were they, 103rd, 112th, like something in that range?
You're pretty generous, sir. How about 132nd in penalty yards per game and 134th, which was, as I like to say, butt naked last in the Power 4 in penalties per game.
Okay, so I didn't want to give them I didn't want to just jump to thinking they were the worst in the entire country. That's on me. Maybe I just blocked that out quite a bit, but you can't win a national championship being the very worst, most penalized team in the entire country. And look, you talk about the two teams that won national championships outside of that top 60 threshold. Well, it's the best offense I've seen in my lifetime in 2019 LSU. And it's a Clemson team with a game-changing quarterback, but a defensive line that only could be rivaled over the last decade by those seen at Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah.
Right? Those game-changer, all-pro NFL level guys on the interior stopped just about anybody in the country, and it almost didn't matter because as long as it wasn't over the goal line, well, you can get as close as you want with those penalties, knowing that defensive line will stand up. So does Texas have that? Do they have the best offense we've seen in 20 years? No. Do they have the best defensive line that we've seen over the last 10 years? Probably not. So they absolutely must be a better defensive team or a penalized team in 2026 than what we saw last year.
Yeah. Marcus, what really stood out to me too, looking at these numbers is, you go back to, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson at the start of the CFP era, the talent disparity in college football, you had every year, probably, 6, give or take a couple teams that realistically could compete for it. But now that we're in the NIL rev share transfer portal era, the talent's spread out more. Your margin for error seems a lot smaller. And I looked at just the last 3 national champions, Marcus, Michigan in 23, Ohio State in 24, and Indiana last year. Those 3 programs, each of those years in penalties per game, tied for first, tied for 11th, tied for 5th in penalty yards per game, 3rd, 16th, and 2nd. So as the talent gets spread out and your margin for error shrinks, you better be really buttoned up because everybody's got talent now, Marcus. Very, very, very few teams on a schedule now, especially a 9-game SEC schedule like the one Texas is getting ready to play. You're not going to be able to out-talent the majority of the teams you play.
Yeah, and your margins for error get smaller and smaller, right? So you don't have the luxury of being able to kind of put yourself behind the 8 ball that frequently when you're playing against teams that have the amount of talent that they do, Jeff. And to your point, I think once, they get past the Tennessee game, you have a bye, and then you're playing straight through from there on until A&M, and then hopefully an SEC championship game. So you really don't have, the ability to kind of have a hiccup in there. Now, granted, that's the same for other teams, but, you just kind of ran off the numbers. They've shown to be, amongst the worst in college football in that area. And that's certainly not something that you would expect for a team, that is, has that kind of pedigree, has that kind of talent. So I imagine it's definitely something that is top of mind for all of them. I'd have a really hard time believing that a guy that's as animated as Will Muschamp or Jabbar Jalouk are going to be able to kind of go through, some of these summer workouts after having already done, spring ball and that not be a supreme emphasis. And then I certainly imagine that once you get into fall camp, it'll be something that they're harping on. It was one of those deals where, at times, like for us, and especially I think it was coming off of that Washington State, bowl loss. Yeah. I mean, it was pounded into us, that this is a paramount thing that you pay attention to, that your assignment you're responsible for. And so even if it's not something that results in a penalty, things that, you're just kind of taking your eye off the ball and not being disciplined on, it was really pointed out to you and it could cost you playing time. So I think, these guys are certainly going to have to, make some leaps and bounds improvements in that. I know it's kind of crazy. We've been saying if they could even cut that in half, you'd be fine. But, again, as the data has shown, I mean, what I think you just said, Jeff, in the past 3, it hadn't been anybody outside of the top 15. So I want to say, it's something that is pretty critical and certainly something largely in their control.
Sark likes to say the standard is the standard, but Marcus, Greg Robinson and Dick Tomey brought not our standard to Texas. And I'm not going to put words in your mouth, Marcus, but I think you've called that the worst offseason you ever went through at Texas.
Yes, you are spot on, my man. You don't have to put words in my mouth. You're quoting me well. And it is not one that I would wish upon anybody, but it got us right. It certainly changed our focus. And I think it ended up paying off in dividends. But yeah, those aren't the type of off seasons you want when you're facing that kind of deal.
Builds character, although that's not something you want to hear or care to hear during a process. But I'm sure everybody that went through it's better off for it, Marcus. All right, we're going to get to some recruiting with CJ on the other side, but right now I want to thank our lead sponsor here on the Wednesday night live stream, and that is Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Are you stuck in the corporate rat race with 2 weeks PTO with no control over the money you can make or your schedule in general? If that's you, give Andy a call. He'll take you through a process to help you find a business that'll fit your skill sets and your financial goals. Franchise ownership is something that's not for everyone, but if you've got a desire to take control of your destiny, call Andy or email him at andy@myperfectfranchise.net. Again, that's andy@myperfectfranchise.net. And we want to thank Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise for sponsoring the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. All right, I got a super chat we got to get to, CJ. We'll get to recruiting here in just a second, but got to get to the super chat. G Smith 219, thank you so much for the super chat. How would the team/defense performance been different if Todd Orlando had stayed as DC when Sark was hired rather than hiring PK? Well, I can solve that, G Smith, because Todd Orlando wasn't the DC. It was Chris Ash in Tom Herman's last year, and then PK was hired. CJ, I think Chris Ash was on to something, I think. And, it was one of those deals. And I think we saw that at Notre Dame a little bit last year. Like his scheme is one of those that it can take people some time to get used to. There's a lot to absorb, but once you get it and it starts to click, you can see the results. I don't know if things would have been drastically different. I just think at the end of the day, as good as PK was, CJ, it didn't fit exactly what Sark was looking for, as evidenced by, I think his first two choices were Will Muschamp and Pete Golding. Very different defenses stylistically from what PK has played.
Yeah, no, it would have been really interesting. It had Todd Orlando stuck around a little bit longer, right? Had he made it through that final year, if I think Tom Herman kind of broke glass in case of emergency, understanding that the writing was on the wall for his tenure at Texas. And, it's one of those little tricks that head coaches like to do. When they know that there's rumblings of their job on the hot seat, they say, oh, shoot, let's just ditch a coordinator and, try to, attach a parachute to my lifeline here. But no, it would have been interesting, right? Because PK, for as good as he was at Texas, was not super aggressive coming after the quarterback, right? It wasn't one of those things where it was, we're going to bring exotic looks, right? We're going to bring 5, 6, or 7 from different angles, different levels of the defense. Now, at times he had that, right? We saw every now and then a corner blitz. We saw Michael Taff or Jalen Gilbo blitzing from the second and third levels at times, but it wasn't really his MO, right? He likes playing, here's 4, maybe 5, and we're just going to play zone on the backside, right? We're not going to be beat as a result of a bust in coverage or, a loss in a one-on-one rep. So with that said, I look back at, the infamous 3rd and 17, when you bring all-out pressure and you sit there and you say, we're going to bring the pressure to you. We're going to enforce our will on the offensive play, and it doesn't always work out that way, right? So I look at a guy like, Chris Boyd has had a hell of a career in the NFL. Mm-hmm. But Chris Boyd often was left on an island one-on-one, and in turn, it was a play that didn't go Texas's direction because of pressure brought their way with no safety help over the top. So that's kind of where I differ between the two, is a lot of pressure brought from Orlando in those Herman defenses, whereas PK said, hey, you know what, you can get to the red area, it doesn't matter, because you're not finding the end zone with this defensive line in the way that we scheme against it. So I don't know, y'all probably more well in tune when it comes to, the individual differences between the two. But that was one of the things that stood out to me immediately was PK won't get beat for a 60, 70-yard touchdown, but you can inch across the field if you want and if you execute to perfection, essentially.
Yeah, Marcus, I think, how would it be, if Chris Ash was the Texas DC when Texas went to the SEC? But I thought Chris Ash, in a lot of ways, was perfect for the Big 12. A lot of the stuff that Gary Patterson did, it matched up with what Chris Ash did. It's a lot of match quarters, kind of that Gary Patterson, Pat Narduzzi style of defense. I think in terms of pressure, kind of maybe the middle. Chris Ash was the middle ground between PK, who's never going to be a high blitz rate guy. He hadn't been his whole career. He was never just going to dial it up. And Todd Orlando, Marcus, which Todd Orlando, Manny Diaz, Alex Grinch is kind of that same that Rex Ryan, Rob Ryan defense where you're bringing guys from all angles, you're blitzing, and when it gets home, it's effective. But man, you don't fit a run the right way, or you don't replace defenders. Man, you're probably giving up a 60, 70, 80-yard touchdown. Like, it is feast or famine with that defense. So I think Chris Ash between the two was kind of the nice middle ground with Todd Orlando, who I thought he and Manny Diaz were similar in that I thought they blitzed too much and got too exotic.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, Jeff. The way Orlando kind of went about it, I think as CJ mentioned, right, a lot of all-out blitzes, ton of cover zero, right? And so I think as that, kind of progressed and as you got further and further into kind of today's athlete, you're right. Anybody that's slightly out of position, and I mean, it's out the gate, right? Whereas I think Chris Ash was more like he was kind of into blitzing corners a bit more. You often saw him kind of run that 4-2-5 quarters coverage. And so, he was kind of a bridge to, I think, ultimately PK. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think, I think for what the Big 12 was, and then even bringing in Gary Patterson to help PK out, I think it was probably right to move on from Chris Ash. I think, though, in its current iteration, I'm not sure I would be comfortable with either Ash or Todd Orlando, in this SEC environment, and especially for the schedule that they have coming up.
Yeah, CJ brought it up, so I'll bring it up because CJ mentioned 3rd and 17. So we'll do it. And that's kind of what we're talking about. Like I love Caden Stearns to death, but you call a zero blitz on 3rd and 17. You've got Caden Stearns with a bad leg trying to cover Justin Jefferson one-on-one. I mean, CJ, again, I love Caden Stearns, but at that point, you really almost literally got a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest. Like, it's hard to cover Justin Jefferson when you got two good legs. You got a bad wheel. Yeah. You got no shot.
Yeah, and again, they were that close on the pressure getting home up the middle. It was – I mean, Joe Burrow is Joe Burrow. Avoided pressure, made a hell of a throw, and Justin Jefferson, very difficult to guard even in the NFL. So tough spot for Caden Stearns. That's a play I'm sure many Texas fans would love to have back. I'm sure it's a play Orlando and Herman would have liked to have had back.
No doubt. All right, we'll get back to it here in just a second. We got another super chat to get to. We've also got some recruiting we need to get to, but let's thank another one of our sponsors here on the Wednesday Night Live Stream and give a big shout out to our friends at Rogue Shop. RogueShop.com is where you need to go because Rogue Shop is bringing real plant medicine back to its roots. Rogue Shop ships nationwide. Make sure you use the promo code ONTEXAS for a special discount. Rogue Shop has it all from oils and creams to flour and gummies. And that's RogueShop.com and use the code ONTEXAS for a special discount. And we want to thank our friends over at Rogue Shop for sponsoring the Wednesday Night Live Stream here at On Texas Football. All right, we've got another super chat to get to. Silver Spur Sicko. Love you, Silver Spur Sicko. Always appreciate the commentary and your participation in the chat. So don't shoot the messenger on this one. Knocked on wood. If Arch gets knocked out, can KJ take us to the promised land? No Chicken Littles in the chat. So I hear you, Silver Spur Sicko. I can't promise that this will go well, but CJ, that's a question that I don't really want to know the answer to, quite frankly.
Correct.
I think that is the best answer to this. And, fortunately, you have a deep quarterback room, a lot of talent in there that can get you across a finish line or two if you need to without Arch. Can you win it all? Right now, I don't think so. And that's no knock on KJ. That's no knock on Diabell. But you have to have a perfect team to win a national championship if your quarterback is not an immediate game changer. That's not to say KJ or Dia can't become that guy in their career, but they'll come into this year, I believe, with about 12 or 15 combined snaps in their college career.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to ask for. And you're going to be playing some of the best teams that the college football has seen in recent memory. So I would say no, but you go out and you bolster your offensive line, you add a running game, all for the simple fact that you hope that Arch Manning isn't taking as many hits as a year ago, knowing that it should alleviate a lot of the pressure that he faced from a year ago as well.
Yeah, Marcus, I guess this would be dependent on where's your running game, how much do you trust the running backs, and what kind of a passing game could you build around KJ Lacey with all the weapons you've got, assuming everybody's healthy. But again, Silvers Persico, I love you. Appreciate the question. Marcus, I don't want to know the answer. I think it's pretty safe to say this team isn't hitting its ceiling with anybody other than Arch Manning at quarterback.
Yes, and only thing I will say to it is, we don't know today, obviously, and so the betting favorite would be a challenge. But I also think it depends on when in the season it were to happen. And I mean it's rare, but it still takes me back to that Ohio State season where they ran through multiple quarterbacks, and ultimately Cardale Jones took them all the way. And up until that point, I don't know how many snaps he had taken. Nor do I think anybody would have necessarily projected it that way. Now, granted, he had, the prototypical build and all of that kind of thing for that particular roster. But also I don't think that roster was perfect. It was hitting on all cylinders in the right spots. And, they were able to survive, multiple injuries at that position. I think that might be the last I talk about QB injuries for the offseason. So.
Yeah, let's keep it that way. But do appreciate the super chat, Silver First Sicko, nonetheless. CJ, I've teased it long enough. We got some recruiting news, notes, and nuggets to get to.
Yeah, 3 new official visits scheduled for the University of Texas in June. We'll start all the way out in Hawaii. Toa Sateli, the linebacker at a Mililani. Ooh, I'm so glad we don't cover Hawaii recruiting, by the way, fellas. Mililani, Hawaii linebacker, 6'3.5", big body, 220 pounds. We saw him inside the facility not too long ago during one of the media availabilities. Impressive looking kid. Texas went out. Johnny Nansen flew out to Hawaii earlier this spring to go see him in person. They now have an official setup for June 5th. Texas also has a kicker scheduled for June 19th. Again, special teams still matter. Kickers are people. We've talked about that on previous shows. Noah Ash has scheduled an official visit. He also has officials to Auburn, Vanderbilt, Florida State's in the mix. So there's 4 different ones on the schedule right now for Noah Ash. He comes in June 19th. And then Landis Williams Callis, the big-time running back out of Richmond Randall down out of the Houston area. A lot of folks have been wondering when or if he would schedule an official visit to the Texas Longhorns. We now have the answer. He will be in on the final visit weekend, the week right after Texas A&M, who will host him June 12th. He will be on campus June 19th. So, again, we've talked about it, up to 49 official visits. That final weekend right now, Texas will be coming in with 4 commitments in the boat for that weekend. They will have 19 total visitors, including Monsoon Sales. You look at Landon Williams Callis, Bryson Thrower, all coming in that weekend as well. A couple of really talented defensive linemen, DeMarco Jenkins, Jason Johnson, both from the Houston area, and then Tyler Alexander, who Jerry Hamilton was out to see earlier this week. That is shaping up to be one of the biggest weekends of the entire recruiting calendar, and they added 2 guys over the last 24 hours to it as well. We'll have more for you at ontexasfootball.com regarding everything official visits.
CJ, go ahead, Marcus.
My bad, Jeff. I had a quick question for you, and you may not know this one. I apologize for putting you on the spot with it. I remember during, there was a time where, like, during Texas relays, if a guy wasn't competing but was a football recruit, like the next day or something, he could come over. I don't even know if anybody's around the facility right now, but with the state track meet being this weekend, if there was like a 6A guy that's running on Saturday, would they be able to check anything out on Friday or vice versa?
Yeah, so I don't believe you can check out a school or go on a tour on the day that you're competing for a UIL event. Now, if that is on a campus, like I know A&M has the Blue Bonnet Invitational as well. Texas obviously has the Texas Relays and the state relays as well. It would have to be the next day. It could not be on the same day as a competition for any of these athletes. Now, Texas also opens up DKR for a lot of these athletes to go out there and warm up, throw, run, stretch, take photos, whatever. They want to use this as a marketing tool for the guys who are considering Texas, obviously. but they cannot go on a tour the same day. They'd have to stick around. And at that point, it would be up to a parent, because I'm sure most high school coaches who, accompany these kids on travel, they're sitting there saying, get me the hell home, right? I don't want to be out in the sun watching track meets any more days that I don't have to. So it would have to be the next day or a day prior to them competing.
Gotcha. Good stuff. Sorry about that, Jeff. Go ahead, man.
No, you're good, Marcus. Don't apologize. CJ, I do want to look at running back, though, because Landon Williams Callis, his name comes up anytime we have the running back discussion. We talked about it here on the channel on the recruiting breakdown. We talked about it over at ontexasfootball.com. Could you take in theory, two kind of top tier blue chip running backs in the class? And we said, hey, you can if it's the right two, if it makes sense. CJ, how much NIL you're devoting to high school running backs? That's for Sark and Brandon Harris and the folks at Texas to decide. But do you like the potential of a 2 running back class with Noah Roberts and Landon Williams Callis, or what do you think is going to happen with that second running back spot, if there is a second running back spot?
No, I love that combination. If that's where Texas ends up, like if that is what they end up signing, that is as good as a 2 running back class that they've signed under Sark. I think it's just that simple. I'm a huge fan of Noah Roberts and the way that he has that one cut ability and go. And then you look at what Landon Williams Callis, even at, I'll give him 5'8", right? He's not a big body. He's not a big physical running back by any means, but he's as shifty as anybody that we've seen coming out of Texas since maybe Jaden Blue. He has, I think, a little bit more wiggle than Jaden Blue. That would be a very impressive 2 running back class for Texas. So, you can also pitch the ability to say, hey, you are using both backs out of the backfield, right? Landon Williams Callis, a big-time 7-on-7 target. We've talked about it already when Noah Roberts committed his, I believe, 50 receptions in 2025 out of the backfield as a running back, used sometimes in the slot. It's a hard thing to find coming out of the high school ranks, and it's something that Sark certainly values in his offense. So is Landon Williams Callis as fast as Jaden Blue? Look, Jaden Blue, I believe, came in around 10.4, maybe 10.5. He ran what he called a disappointing 4.39 at the combine as well, 4.38. So is he as fast? Maybe not right now. I think he could be.
Interesting. Yeah, we've had some our OTF staff text. We're talking about just running back builds and that position. Marcus, it's interesting. Like, the deeper we get into the NIL rev share portal era, the more your college football roster, you've got to think of it. Okay. You got to think of it like how an NFL team would build a roster. Your money allocated to quarterback and offensive tackle and pass rusher, probably wide receiver and corner. I don't know if you want to tie up a ton of money in running back, but Marcus, if you're operating without a salary cap, in theory, does it really matter at that point how much money you've got tied up in running back?
No, I mean, to your point, like if you don't have that limitation, then it certainly gives you more options. But I do like the fact that as the NFL has kind of devalued the position, the kids that are still choosing to play it understand the value of playing alongside somebody else, right? Like it's pretty rare that, I mean, even in the NFL, like it pisses me off sometimes when it happens because I have them on a lot of my fantasy teams, but I'll look up and old Tyler Algier is like stealing carries from Bijan. I'm like, what's going on here? But again, you got to kind of protect your investment to a degree. You got to know when you want to count on them. And so, I think it makes sense that at any given time, you're going to have a couple of backs that you feel good about. And if it means that in a particular class, you have to tie up a little bit more than maybe in another, then so be it.
It's I don't like that's not a problem with recruiting. It's just my brain is simplistic, Marcus. So it's tough for me to think, okay, we haven't even had the 26 season yet. Like, what would the 2027 Texas backfield look like? Presumably Derek Cooper's your one without question. Mm-hmm. Michael Terry, James Simon, Jet Walker, like where are they at on the roster? I don't know. Right. So where would 2 high school backs fit in? Do you have based on the needs of your offense? Do you go to the portal and get one? So yeah, it's not. It's a little more. I don't know if nuanced is the right term when we're comparing it to building an NFL roster, but it's not as cut and dried as when you got a salary cap and say no, like we can't devote more than this percentage of our available funds to running back. At that point, it really doesn't matter, especially Marcus. And you mentioned it, like guys are more willing to come in and understand, all right, it's going to be better for my career in the long run if I'm playing in a group of running backs rather than just piling up all these carries and getting tread taken off my tires and shortening my career at a position where the lifespan of a running back is really short anyway. So, and on top of that too, we've seen plenty of times where, if Sark has the kind of personnel where he can get into two back looks, he'll use two backs in multiple ways. Like, you'll get handoffs, but you'll get targets. You'll get plenty of opportunities to touch the football if you're a capable running back in Sark's offense.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, we can't get too far into like 2027 and what that roster looks like. That being said, I know earlier we were knocking on wood and not wishing ill on the super chat there. But on the flip side of that coin, if you're projecting like the highest end of outcomes, if they make a run and you go and win your national championship, it may make it even more easy for those coffers to open up, for some of those boosters to be willing to, hey, I don't mind finding, some more dollars somewhere, or, creating some additional NIL opportunities, that rev share being even greater for you to, have some more to play with to allocate it towards, maybe some running backs if need be.
All right, good stuff, Marcus. We'll get back to your questions, comments, whatever you got on recruiting, team, whatever. We've also got a topic that CJ brought up over on TexasFootball.com that I want to get to before we get out of here. But I want to take this opportunity to let everybody know that this edition of On Texas Football, this Wednesday night live stream, is brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. And the calendar has flipped to the month of May. Weather's perfect. Everything's rolling, and Prize Picks adds more fun to your favorite sports. Every possession, every at-bat, every shot, every pitch, it all matters. You're locked in from start to finish. You're not just watching anymore. You got a little juice on it, and there's a chance you could cash in. And the best part about Prize Picks is it's easy. You don't need to do any deep dives or any complicated nonsense. You're just picking more or less on player stats. That's it. Points, rebounds, hits, strikeouts, whatever you're already watching. Just build your lineup, submit it, and you're good to go. It takes about a minute to do all that. And you got options everywhere: basketball, baseball, hockey, golf. You can stick to one sport, or you can mix and match across multiple sports. Whatever's on, it fits. Today, we've got Kamar Rocker to have less than 3.5 strikeouts. He's been up and down this season, hasn't struck out more than 3 since nearly a month ago. We've also got Aaron Judge. The Yankees start to have more than half a hit plus run plus RBI. The Yankees might be struggling, but Judge has been somewhat hot lately, racking up 7 hits in his last 3 games. And that's the play for today. You trust your gut. You lock it in. Now every single moment actually means something. Prize Picks is available in all 50 states, including right here in the great state of Texas. So if you haven't jumped in yet, now is the time. Just download the Prize Picks app, use the code HMA, play $5, and they'll give you $50 in lineups instantly. Again, download the Prize Picks app, code HMA, 5 get you 50. It's that simple. And as always, play smart, play responsibly, play Prize Picks. We good? Look like we might have been having a technical issue. Is that me, or am I lagging a little bit?
I think we're back. I think we're back in action.
Okay. All right. Good stuff. Apologize for that. Don't know quite what happened, but let's get to some questions, guys. Bunk Moreland, thank you for the question. Says, are penalties a Sark problem? Culture too easygoing? Is it a flood problem? How do you fix this? Marcus, the late great Mike Leach once famously said, you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. Ultimately it is on the coaches. As you said, there's a certain level, if you talk about the standard is the standard, there's a certain level you've got to get to where, man, especially the pre-snap penalties, like those have just got to get to the point where it's unacceptable, and guys just understand, like, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You can't false start. You can't jump offside. You can't have motion penalties. And Marcus, the deal, like, and I'm not saying like you're okay with it, but there's some penalties like holding, defensive pass interference, like in the heat of the moment, some of that stuff is understandable. It might be ticky-tack called from one week to the next, but man, the pre-snap penalties, those are the ones for coaches that just those drive you nuts.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Ultimately, the buck stops with Sark. I mean, he is paid what he's paid for a reason. He's the head man for a reason. So I don't think you know, in any way he would, you know, disagree with that or shirk the responsibility of it. It's tough for me because like I kind of wear two hats with it. Like certainly I think it's incumbent upon the staff, you know, to impress upon the guys the importance of it, you know, show them the data, you know, you name it. And then the player in me looks at it as like, man, like have some pride about your work, have some personal accountability, and have some accountability amongst yourselves, right? And so I don't believe the culture is too easygoing. I don't think you have the level of success that they've had. Granted, they haven't reached the mountaintop, but I don't think you have, you know, the success that they've had and been able to kind of turn the program around in the way that they have if the culture is too easygoing. Anytime I've seen the guys work, it's not been something that's been, you know, lazy or half stepping. And if anything, you know, it's pretty cool to even see that like they're putting, you know, extra time in behind the scenes. That being said, you know, at the end of the day, when you get in the game, like whatever gets called, whatever the lineup is, I mean, you name it, like the player has to go out there and execute, and the coach has to put them in the best position to do so. So, you know, the former player in me, you know, wants to say like, get Casey in there and like, you know, dog cuss a few guys and get them to understand the importance of it and have some pride in it. I certainly don't think it's a thing where like, you know, they wear it with a badge of honor. Right. So I just don't know, you know, not being in those locker rooms and in those meetings and understanding like kind of what their vibe is, how they approach it. I can tell you for us, we took things very, very personally amongst ourselves. I know it's used often about like kind of player-led cultures, but that's really how we were. We fought a lot, but it was like in that brotherly way, right? Like we can fight amongst ourselves to kind of get aligned, but nobody from the outside can, you know, try to attack us. And so, you know, for me, I'm looking to see the players themselves kind of take that next step. Hopefully the guys in the leadership positions recognizing the importance of it and, you know, how far it can or won't take them.
All right, good stuff, Marcus. CJ, we're going to go kind of rapid fire with some recruiting questions. You ready?
Yep.
All right. Burnt in 75 asks, call your shot, CJ. Top 5 class?
You know, I think we had a conversation on this a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week. I don't know. I don't care a ton for a top 5 class. Like if you're in that range from 3 to 7, like that's perfectly fine. That tells me that you're getting the top end talent that you need to get in to immediately impact the next year's team, while also having high end upside for a year, 2, or 3 whenever they're getting developed. I don't need the whole class. I don't need 20 players of true blue chip, high, you know, top of the line level guys. That I think that day and age of recruiting is, you know, in a way, I think it's ancient. Right. And it's crazy that just 2 years ago, we were still of this thinking, but you're seeing so much dead money on the sidelines on Saturdays that it's almost to the point of, well, why did we even recruit this battle to begin with? If that kid didn't get on the field, he's going to leave anyway. And now we're out a couple $100,000 and we got nothing out of it. So does Texas end up top 5? I think so, simply for the fact that the guys that they're after right now, you look at a John Meredith, right, a Brian Swanson, you know, Montre Jackson, Ishmael Kamara. You look at some of the defensive backs or defensive front 7 guys that they're after, you know, Mitchell Turner, Jabarius Garrett. Like they're after the top of the top, but how deep will that class be? Will it compete for a top 3 or top 1 spot? I don't think so, but if you're in that range where you're in the middle single digits, I'm perfectly happy with it.
Marcus, there's I think there is a misconception, a perception that, hey, Texas just has endless funds, and I've never seen more kind of useless social media posts or articles about roster valuations and how much is hypothetically being spent. But, you know, to CJ's point, Marcus, if you have too many situations where you've got dead money, just recruits sitting on the sideline, not to say that you're ever going to be hurting for money at Texas, but the people putting that money up, Marcus, they didn't get that money by making foolish decisions. At some point, they're going to wonder, well, if you're not making well with these resources, I'm going to stop giving you resources to work with. So it is something that for Sark people might not like it, but that is something you got to be cognizant of.
Yeah. And, you know, I think, you know, we've had, like CJ said, we had this conversation. I agree with him, like personally, As long as it's the right guys, if you're somewhere in that 3 to 7, 8, range, I'm good with it. And even more so in the way that, I guess, to, Sark's credit the other day, from the article that came out, with the way that things really aren't regulated right now. I'm not suggesting that Texas is dabbling in it in that manner, right? But more so like you can go get what you need out of the portal. And it's already proven, and some of that money is, it comes with a bit of a track record behind it, right? As opposed to with every high school guy, as much as you want to project, it's really tough to figure out how a guy is going to pan out when they get to the next level. So I think I've further begun to care less and less about, what the actual number next to Texas is, by the time you get through that final February signing day, because right as it's wrapping up, the portal is often firing away as well. So.
All right, good stuff, Marcus. CJ got a couple more. Yes, OU sucks. Says, hey, CJ, what's the main focus for positions in the upcoming official visits?
Yeah, great question, right? I start looking at what Texas already has committed. They have 2 offensive linemen in the fold. They have 2 edge rushers right now. So how can they start patching things together? Well, I'll throw a wide receiver in this because, look, holding on to Easton Royal, I think, is going to be as big as any other recruitment that Texas is after at the moment. That final weekend is going to be massive, right? That's when you have Easton Royal coming in, Montrell Sales coming in, Bryson Thrower out of North Forney. Look, those 3 are basically the top 3 on the board at the moment. Will they land all 3? I'm not saying that, but I'm really interested to see how that weekend plays out in particular. And then linebacker is going to be really interesting. I mentioned Tosatelli out of Mililani, Hawaii. That's June 5th, right? Joakim Gouda coming in June 12th. And then Mekhi Allen out of the Don Bosco Prep in New Jersey, and Israel Hammonds out of Oklahoma. Look, that linebacking room is very talented with the linebackers that are coming in June, but it's a lot of national guys, right? It's not many from the in-state. So how many of these linebacker prospects can you truly make headwaves with so that you go into July feeling good and that you're in a prime position to land a commit? That's going to be the big question. Cotton_SEC. I need to fix the blinds because this happens every show. You'd think I'd have learned by now, but I'm just getting blinded every day at 7:44. I'll fix it. I'll fix it by tomorrow.
It's just some blackout curtains or something, CJ. We can make that happen. CJ, we got a combo for the last recruiting question. Doug Haywood asks, CJ, has Texas moved on from A&M commit safety Jaquan Snell out of Waxahachie? And then Brian P says, CJ, are we looking at spending at safety in this class, or are we going development?
Yeah, look, I'll start with Jaquan Snell. Very talented out of Waxahachie. One of my favorite prospects in the state. Until he shows back up on campus, I'm thinking that boat sailed. Now, Texas could very well stay on this and hunt like they have in previous cycles for one of the top guys in the state. But look, I think he likes that College Station, Norman, Oklahoma vibe of a campus, very similar to that of Waxahachie. I don't think he's a big fan of the bright lights in the city, which to each their own, right? And obviously very talented. A&M is going to make sure that they do everything that they can to hold on to him. Now, going back to safety, this is going to be really interesting, right? Junior Tupou out of Alabaster, Alabama comes in on June 5th. Isaiah Udom out of South Oak Cliffs comes in on the 12th. And then Dylan McGee, kind of a hybrid safety corner coming in from Red Oak. Right now, I think Texas is going to look to immediately try to replace a Jelani McDonald out of the portal next year. I think that's just my best guess at this point, unless you see an absolute undeniable growth out of an Xavier Filsaime or a finally healthy Jonah Williams. So with that said, a Jonah update, look, still recovering as far as I know. He's going through the medical side of things, rehabilitation each day. The whole team is off. Marcus, you could probably speak to that. The month of May, folks go home, right? They get away from the facility. So Jonah right now, he's around enough to be, stop in with the baseball team every now and then. But right now, you won't know much until he's out of the sling and moving around later in the summer.
Yeah, there's not a ton for anybody to be doing right now. School is out for the most part, unless maybe somebody's doing one of those mini mesters in between sessions. I think they report back what we've heard May 31st or something like that. And so, I mean, there's not a ton for him to do, but try to get his body healthy. And so to that end, there's not really any true organized team workouts that are going to be going on right now. It's going to be, a lot of work of guys on their own. I saw some video on social media the other day of Colin Simmons working out up at one of those facilities right next to the Star with, some guys that are some pro trainers and stuff up in the area. So that makes sense. He's probably been back home for a bit or at least to check back in. And so, it's just kind of that time of year where there's a bit of a lull, but it's really going to be the last time that they have off until hopefully, mid to end of January.
Yep.
Yeah.
No doubt. All right. We'll get back to it in just a second. Get your questions ready because we'll get to them before we wrap up. But I want to thank one last sponsor here on the Wednesday night live stream. Cannot forget about Laura Baker, accomplished awesome realtor Laura Baker. Laura is the long-running sponsor of Football Theory here on the channel with myself and Rod Babers. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. Give her a shout at 512-784-0505. Again, that's 512-784-0505. And we want to thank Laura Baker for her sponsorship, not just of Football Theory, but also the Wednesday night live stream here at On Texas Football. Big shout out to Laura Baker. Much appreciated. I want to get to this real quick, and CJ, I'll get to your topic over on the website here in just a second. But Jason says, looking back on the Sark era, which defensive player would have gained the most with a Will Muschamp style of defense? Andrew Makuba, Anthony Hill. It's hard to imagine Andrew Makuba having a better year than he had in 2024. Marcus, I'll go a different road. And I look at the two recruiting classes that Will Muschamp put together, the 2010 class, which he got for 1 year, and that 2011 class with Quandre Diggs and Cedric Reed. I could see what he was doing in those two classes, like the kind of defense he was building. Mm-hmm. That to me is the one that I focus on more than which of the players that came before in this recent run would have benefited from Will Muschamp, because we never got to see a Jackson Jeffcoat, Jordan Hicks defense with Cedric Reed and Quandre Diggs and all those guys. A lot of guys ended up playing in the NFL, never got to see it put all together under Will Muschamp and what it could have been. So that to me is more of a question. I think Anthony Hill's kind of the obvious answer, right? Unless you guys have something else.
Nah, I mean, that to me, it's tough because you never know what goes into some of these evaluations. It's one of those deals where I still think he has a tremendous NFL career ahead of him. And I like, where he ultimately landed, but you still can't convince me that like under Muschamp, he wouldn't been a first round pick, because at that point, I definitely think it would have been a much more aggressive attacking defense, and he would have been given more opportunities to rush the passer, which was, ended up being one of the knocks on him when it kind of came draft time. And I don't think it was truly about him, right? It was just he wasn't asked to do it enough. And so while it's the low-hanging fruit, I have trouble thinking of a better answer.
CJ, you got a better one than Anthony Hill?
No, I mean, it just makes sense. You have a guy as versatile as him. You'd like to find different ways to include him in the pass rush, to disguise ways to free up Colin Simmons as a result of Anthony Hill being moved around. No one's done that better than a Georgia defense having as many weapons, right, as like a Jalen Carter, right, a Mikhail Williams, right? Everybody that they've put out in the last 4 or 5 years, dangerous, versatile pieces up front at that linebacker position. So he's the one for me. I'm trying to think. I don't know how much different a Baron Sorrell would have been, but given he was, your premier pass rusher opposite of Colin Simmons for a year, what could have that looked like in a way that could have freed him up the way that I'm sure we'll see a Zeno or a Lance Jackson at times this year? So it's Anthony Hill, but I don't know, for the sake of the argument, I'll go somewhere else.
Marcus, I don't feel like I'm out of pocket when I say this. What Sergio Kendall was to Texas fans under Will Muschamp.
Yep.
That's what Anthony Hill would have been.
I think that's spot on, Jeff. Very astute.
And by the way, Sergio Kendall was a finalist for the Butkus Award for the nation's top linebacker and the Ted Hendricks Award as the nation's defensive end. So good they had to make him a finalist for Player of the Year at 2 different positions. So Sergio Kendall, one of the best Longhorns I've seen in my time following the program. CJ, there are some other guys that you mentioned over on TexasFootball.com. It's an interesting topic. College football Hall of Fame guys that have come through Texas. Really, did you narrow this down to the last decade, last 10 years, right?
Yeah, but you could probably narrow it down even more to just the Sark era, right? The last 6 years or so. It was interesting, but this also kind of tells you how deep in the weeds of the offseason we are, because it's, projecting. I think they have to be 10 years removed from college to even be in consideration. Okay. But it was a fun practice, Marcus. It was fun. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it's one of those deals, like, you don't think about it initially, for a little bit. And then it's like you start kind of creeping up on you on guys that are eligible and who could go in. So it's something I haven't honestly looked at, CJ. Yeah. So it's something I probably need to do a little more research on myself.
The College Football Hall of Fame is weird. So CJ, the requirements, unless I'm missing something, it's just 10 years removed from the end of your football career, and you had to be on an NCAA recognized All-American team, a first-team All-American.
Your collegiate football career or football career period? Your
football career.
Okay. So if you play in the league, you have to be 10 years removed from whenever you hang it up.
Yeah, that's why it's like, man, how did it take Eric Dickerson so long to get in the College Hall of Fame? How'd Reggie Bush just get in like 2 years ago? Like, it's nuanced and it's weird, but I like the exercise, CJ, because there are guys that fit the bill under Sark that you're like, some guys have a real chance to get in there.
No, 100%. And I start looking at guys who brought back hardware, right? I think that's originally how my brain started it. So you get the Bijan Robinsons, right? Kelvin Banks, Tavondre Sweat, Jahdae Barron. But Michael Taft, I think, is going to be a College Football Hall of Famer. Is that crazy to say? Part of a 2-time college football playoff appearance team, won a Big 12 championship, 2-time All-American.
Now you got me looking up who else in the College Football Hall of Fame.
But Michael Huff was a part. Here's the 2025 College Football Hall of Fame class. Monty Ball at Wisconsin, Greg Carr, linebacker at Auburn. Let's see, Graham Harrell, Texas Tech quarterback, Michael Huff, University of Texas defensive back, Alex Mack, offensive lineman at Cal, Haloti Ngata, Steve Slayton, West Virginia, Michael Strahan, Texas Southern, Michael Vick, Virginia Tech. There's probably, it goes 20 deep, right? There's a lot of studs in college football, as we know. But that's kind of where my brain went. I think Colin Simmons will eventually join this conversation too, but who else could? Texas got a lot of talent on their roster right now.
And there's also a weird deal too, where I don't think you can have guys from the same school selected in back-to-back years. So it spaces it out even more. Of the guys that you brought up, CJ, I think the one the two that are probably top list, Bijan Robinson, I think, because of his NFL career where it's trending, I think it'd be one of those deals where, like, okay, if he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, like, how is he not in the College Football Hall of Fame? So I think it'll be one of those deals. Kelvin Banks, I think, of the rest of the guys, I think he's got the strongest argument, because when you're the most decorated offensive lineman that ever played a place like Texas, that's got to mean something.
Yeah. I totally agree.
It's an interesting conversation. I don't know what your case for Taft is necessarily, CJ. Like, when I'm scrolling through looking at some of these names, I think there'll be a bias likely against some of the names in comparison.
Sure. I think the argument for Taft is, one, the story from walk-on to All-American. Two, you start looking at some of the other names that we mentioned. How many multi-year All-Americans were there? Michael Taft has it. I don't think Jade had it.
There aren't that many. No, Jade didn't have it.
Kelvin Banks, unless I'm mistaken, I think was just the one.
No, Kelvin's got 2 because he was. Well,
He's got 2. Okay,
not first team though, not a first team All American though. I don't think.
So that's
maybe the better
again
question ends up
when
being
they
how
take
many
into
safety-
consideration the work. It could happen. I think it could happen.
We'll put you down for being first on the train.
You can wear the conductor hat, CJ. How about that? We'll give you that. All right, that I think that's going to do it for the Wednesday night live stream. Unless we've got anything else. Actually, Rodney's got a super chat that we got to get to. Thank you, Rodney, for the super chat. Said I don't even consider Jonah Williams part of the football team until he quits baseball. Well, Rodney, you maybe not considering him part of the football team while he's suiting up for the football team because Marcus, at this point, as of right now, I haven't gotten any indication that Schloss or Sark is ready to make him choose. So, I mean,
yeah,
we can have our opinions, but to me, until that happens, it's all moot.
Yeah, and for me, I've gotten to the point where I just want the best for the young man. I want him to get healthy, and whatever happens after the fact. At some point, I'm not sure how we're using it, but I know we've been working on, kind of doing some rankings for, the top, what is it, like 30, 40 players on the roster. And I'll spoiler alert, I didn't rank him solely because I just don't know where he's going to be, come the season and how his body's going to hold up. So I've stopped trying to put, projections or expectations on him so that I'm not disappointed in anything that, then comes from it. To me, is just a bonus. But I just want him to get healthy and be able to do whatever it is he chooses to do as healthy as he can and something that, he can really enjoy.
CJ, you got a final thought before we wrap this up?
No, look, at some point, I think he will eventually need to choose a sport. Until that happens, I have no reason to think, anything's going to change. So hopefully he's healthy by the time that the spring or by, the end of summer. I'd love to see him on the football field to finally get an idea of what he can do. But he's in a tough spot, right? And so that safety room in its entirety, I think, gives me a little bit of nerves, a little uneasiness, just because I just don't know what it'll look like outside of Jelani McDonald.
CJ, I think Jay Dobbs mentioned in the chat that you're looking like Dak Prescott staring into the sun, trying to drive the ball into the end zone. So might need to get that fixed at some point. But no, we'll get CJ's curtains taken care of and all kinds of other housekeeping items. But hey, sincerely, everybody, thank you so much for hanging out in the Wednesday night live stream. Thank you for keeping the chat lively. Thank you, as always, for the super chats. They are much appreciated. CJ, Marcus, thank you guys for the knowledge, the intel, the expertise. As always, big thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, doing the job he does, producing the show, the MVP at On Texas Football. That's Matthew, and we would not be able to do this without him. Hey, just want to remind everybody, if you're not a member over at ontexasfootball.com, you still have time to get over to the site and take advantage of our spring sale. Just use the promo code OTFOG and become an OTFOG when you sign up and get 1 year of access for just $39.95. Make sure that you hit that like button before we're done, that you're subscribed to the On Texas Football YouTube channel, and that you got those notifications set. That way, anytime we drop a video or go live, you're not missing any of our Longhorn coverage or breaking news. I want to thank our sponsors for tonight, our lead sponsor, Andy Ludicky and My Perfect Franchise. Also, I want to thank Rogue Shop, Prize Picks, and Laura Baker. If you've got anything that we didn't get to, questions, comments, whatever, make sure you direct them to the guys bright and early tomorrow morning at Coffee and Football. So, for CJ, for Marcus, for Matthew, for the entire On Texas Football staff, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening. And until next time, welcome.